Okay. I'm not hard in love. Oh. Sorry about that. I was just trying to get in the mood to review the AIPA Wrecking Ball. So this is probably the most interesting board I've ever surfed or seen. So some of the design elements are so unique, I have to talk about them. The board has this double bat tail, right? Very unusual looking. And then you got the classic AIPA sting wings. And then the most unique thing is this beveled rail. It's hard to see in the image, but more or less, it's basically inspired from speedboat design. And in fact, I inquired about it, and Duke was kind enough to send me this image of where the design elements come from. Now, off the website, it says this 45-degree split rail design element provides increased lift, rail-to-rail reduced surface area for heightened performance, and positive rail control for carves. So now I'm going to try to explain that in simple terms. Okay, so imagine you have a board that is 21 inches wide. What's basically happening is when you're paddling at the full width of 21 inches wide. Now, as you start to get lift, right, the board wants to come out, and two things are happening. Now, as Duke puts and mentions one, which is air's traveling across the beveled rails, so it's creating a little bit extra lift, but also water tends to want to wrap around curved surfaces. On beveled surfaces, wherever angles are, water wants to kind of slide off and not wrap around. So you're actually creating less drag. So that's another form of lift, because now there's nothing dragging you down. So on top of that, I mentioned the board's 21 inches wide. I believe he says that the bevels, if you measure them, it's about 3/4 of an inch. So both sides, you're talking about 1.5 inches. So at full speed, when you're, let's say, flat on the water traveling, what's actually touching the water is a 19.5-inch board. So now, along with the sting and the reduced tail, you are getting two things. You're getting an amazing grovel feature for paddling and catching waves, and then you're getting this performance feature of a narrower board with a narrower tail. I hope that makes sense. So now let's talk about the concaves. It is kind of rolled at the nose like a slight V, then goes to a single concave, to a double concave between the legs, and then V out the back. So now when I went to size this board, I thought of this kind of like a little skateboard. I wanted something like my old baked potato, which is 5'1". So I opted for the 5'4", which is roughly a little over 29 liters. And I was watching this footage of these guys just ripping it and looking like they're skating. And although I had a similar experience and I very much enjoyed it, I actually had an epiphany, which I'll talk about at the end of the video, okay? But before we get to that, I do want to cover how it's surfed and if it met my expectations of what, I sought out to get from this board initially. So I found the board to paddle really well, and it got into waves really easily. And the planing aspect, you could kind of feel it, because once you start getting momentum, you felt like you had less drag. I'm not going to tell you it's like 5 times, 10 times better, but definitely you could feel, a small percentage where it just felt like it had a little bit more lift and speed. Now down the line, through flat sections, it seemed to work really well, kind of staying true to the principles of the design. And then because of that bat tail and really a sharp edge all the way up to that sting, I think that liftoff I had on that air was, it was almost effortless. I didn't think I had that much speed, but I got pretty good pop. Now, if I can only just pull it. So without a doubt, the board has less drag. Also, with the contour design of the V in the nose as well as the tail, it went rail to rail super easy. And in fact, on a couple top turns, it was almost too easy where I felt like I was going to fall over. So that was just something I had to get used to. Now on this wave, you'll see me, as I'm doing the top turn, my tail kind of flick out. And that has to do with the sting, where I had kind of my weight distributed to the front and it created that pivot point and it allowed me to like literally just push out my back leg really quick. Overall, I had a great deal of fun on this board, but unfortunately I only got to surf it one day. And I will say this, that the board is super unique. It feels as unique as its design. Okay, it does not surf like a conventional board, and it's not good or bad. It's just different. In many cases, it surfs really good. In other cases, you just have to get used to it. So now addressing who this board is designed for, I believe that if you are a beginner, intermediate, and this goes back to the epiphany that I had, that you should surf this board big. And I'm talking like a mid-length volume. So I would surf it at about 42 liters, so around 6 foot long. I went into it thinking I wanted a skateboard, but I realized all the design elements would be so beneficial to something, you know, bigger and longer. Now, if you're super advanced, like those two guys in the clips that I showed earlier, yeah, you could definitely surf it and get as much out of it as, you know, a radical skateboard on water. So the last two things I want to mention is when I surfed this board, I only had the stretch quad set in futures. And because of that, I felt like I did an injustice to the board. I actually wanted to ride it with AIPA fins, but I didn't have any. So right after I surfed this, I said, I'm going to go out and get some. And so I got 2 pairs. I did some Instagram posts of my Horseman quad as well as my Sequencer quad. So one's pivot, one's raked. And the second thing is I reached out to Surf Tech to see if they would allow me to borrow a bigger version of this. And hoping that they actually let me borrow the 5.4 again. So I would love to try it again and make a comparison of the two and see if I'm right about it, you know, riding it as a bigger board. You know, the way Duke recommends it, you know, it's like those two guys, you know, he has this vision of all this high-tech features, and they are, but it almost overlooks the fact that I think it could be so beneficial to someone that's a beginner or intermediate just oversizing the board. Because now, in one way, you're oversizing it, but then you're getting the benefits of that reduced rail line. All right, so wish me luck on that. That's pretty much all I have at the moment, you know, for this particular board. Again, I wish I'd surfed it more than one day. Next time, I hope to get a couple days on the 5.4. Maybe I'll get to borrow the 5.10, 6.0, and then get a couple days on that. But above all else, I hope we get better waves because it's been pretty terrible. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, and until the next one.